We've heard some great conversations today on how to change the way we eat. But I have to ask a fundamental question of everybody in this room, everybody watching online, everybody that really identifies themselves with the food movement. And it's a question that Michael Pollan asked a couple years ago as well. Is there a food movement? Yeah, we have a social movement. That's defined as a loosely organized and sustained campaign in support of a social goal. We definitely have that. I'll get back to that in a little bit. And I'm going to tell you why I felt compelled to come here today and talk about this food movement that I've been a part of for 25 years. The first restaurant that I became a chef in, and I was able to purchase the food. I was responsible for purchasing the food. I wanted an advantage, and that advantage was buying food directly from people who produce food, whether they were farmers or fishermen. And I used to pull my truck directly into the green market in Union Square. Try doing that today, and you'll get a lot of bad looks from a lot of New Yorkers and probably get arrested. But I would pull in there, and I would load my truck full of produce, herbs, vegetables. I would take the time to talk to some of the farmers, find out what they were doing for next week so I can plan my menu. That was my sort of added sort of benefit of living here in New York City. I had this great market that I could access. But I wasn't doing it because I thought that organic or local food was better for the environment. And I wasn't doing it because I cared about farm workers or I cared about local sustainable agriculture system. No, at the time I was doing it because it just made me a better chef. Also around the same time, I was invited to cook at my first Share Our Strength Taste of the Nation event. And back then it was a tiny little event. There was about 20 chefs cooking, but these were the best chefs in New York City. And if you were asked to cook at that event, that means that you arrived. And I felt great about this. In fact, I remember the dish I cooked that night. It was a ragu of sea urchin and crab, served over, it was with a shallot lemon butter, and it was served over potato puree. And I know people lined up for that, and I felt so good about that. But I also kept my ears open that night, and I heard from a few speakers. And I learned that we had a hunger crisis in this country. And I learned there were a lot of people doing some great stuff. And so I decided, and probably because I grew up with modest means, and feel that as a chef, I have a lot of people coming to my restaurants that can afford a good meal, but deep down inside, I believe that high quality food should be accessible and affordable to everybody. So I dedicated myself to doing these fundraisers, showing up whenever someone asked me to. Also at that same time, I sort of redoubled my efforts to learn a little bit more about sort of our agricultural system, but again, to take advantage of great products from my restaurant. I also wanted to learn a little bit more about hunger. I attended some boot camps. I also attended some seminars to sort of teach me how to talk about these things. And I thought that was fine. I'm doing my part. I'm raising some money. Doing some work for food banks. I thought that was it. And then around 8 years ago, my wife was mentoring a young girl. And she had some learning disabilities, and so we tried to get her into a school that could take care of some of those disabilities. And we got a phone call from the principal the first week she was there. And he said that she was scrounging in the garbage for food. And although we thought we were doing a great job for her education, what we didn't realize is we were taking the only meal that she was getting each day out of her mouth. And I should have known better. My mother ran a school lunch program in Elizabeth, New Jersey, where I grew up. And she often told me about the stories of kids coming in who she knew this was the only meal that they were getting all day long, and she wanted to do her best to make sure there was fresh food in that lunchroom. So I should have known better. And so soon after that, my wife came home and said, I'm making a film. I want to explore this hunger crisis that we have in this country. And that film is A Place at the Table. And in making that film, I learned something really, really important. And something I didn't know because I was so used to just going out there and raising money, and I thought the answer was food banking. And food banking, they do some great work, but that wasn't the answer. I found out that we can actually end hunger in this country. We can end it very easily. People are hungry in this country not because we don't have enough food. We produce more than enough food in this country to feed people. People were hungry for political reasons. And because we didn't have the political will to end hunger. Not manage hunger, end hunger. So I'll give you an example of just how sort of the position that we're in right now. I attended this black tie dinner about a year ago for New York Food Bank. And again, they do some great work. We raised $2 million that night. And we all felt really great about ourselves. Last month, we cut $8.9 billion from this food stamp program. We would have to replicate that $2 million every night for the next 12 years to make up for those cuts. Every night. And so all this great work that some of these charitable organizations are doing, they're being undermined by bad policy. You know, I was at a little talk about 2 years ago, and there were a few of us sort of talking about things that we were doing. Michelle Nishan was talking about Wholesome Wave, and Bill Telepan was talking about wellness in the school, all great things, and the talk sort of moved to politics. And you could see several people in a room just looking for the door. They just wanted to run. They didn't want to have this conversation. And thank God, Marion Nessel, she piped up. And she was uncharacteristically being very quiet that day. But she piped up and said, you know, I got to tell you a story. I was on the Hill last week, and I mentioned the food movement. And the congressman said, what are you talking about? He said, well, the food movement, you know, people who care about organic farming, people who care about sustainability, locavores, you know, the food movement. He said, I have no idea what you're talking about. If we don't hear about it up here, there is no movement. Now, that is a very myopic view of the world that usually you see inside the bubble of Washington, D.C. But that's where stuff happens. You know, it's very easy to say that the government's broken. We don't want to go there. It's all we have. It's all we have. If we want better food policies, we need to elect better officials who care about these policies. So I had this great idea. I said, okay, we have 45 million people on SNAP. If you sort of take away the 16 million that are children, you still have 30 million people who could vote. Well, this is great. Well, I guess I was a bit naive to think that people who are struggling to feed their families, people who are looking for jobs, people who are just day in and day out, just trying to cope, they would actually mount a political movement. So that wasn't going to work. So I said, well, how do I join my other passion, which is this food movement that I've been part of for such a long time? Surely if we reach out to that group, we can create a bigger constituency. Can we work together? Without a show of hands, I'm sure if I asked who cares about labeling GMOs in this room, and who cares about getting rid of antibiotics out of our food system, and who cares about great food in school lunch, and who cares about local food systems, who cares about ending hunger, we'd probably all raise our hand to every single one of those. But we're not working together. Too often we're off in our own little silos doing our own thing and looking to get these small little gains. If you look at, as Congresswoman Pingree just pointed out, we made some modest gains. So food advocates got some modest gains in this last farm bill, but hunger advocates lost a lot. And we didn't have to do that. If we stuck together, if we worked together, we didn't have to do that. Didn't have to happen. We didn't need to make that Faustian bargain between good food policy and hunger. And so, through several conversations that I had with Ken, who you just met, Food Policy Action was born. And for the first time, we took leaders of the food movement, people who often never even spoke to each other, people like Wayne Pacelli from the Humane Society, and people like Dave Murphy from Food Politics Now, Gary Hirschberg from Stonyfield Farms, David Beckman from Bread for the World. All these people came together for the first time under one umbrella to start exchanging ideas. And so we started the scorecard. This is a tool that we have to hold our elected officials responsible, to see how they're voting. It's an easy place to go and check and see how they're voting, see what the bill is about, and see whether or not they share our values. Because that's what this is about. This isn't about some elite food movement that's only accessible to people who can afford it. This is about creating a system that is affordable for all to enjoy. This is about values, and it's about justice. A byproduct of the political system is justice. That's what this is about. And so food policy action also is a C4. So we can get directly involved in races. We can make sure that we're singling out the people who are doing the right thing, and the people that are doing the wrong things, they need to lose their jobs. Right. You know, gun advocates, they have the NRA, and they'll vote on that single vote on guns, on Second Amendment. And the pro-life movement, they'll vote that single issue. We need to start voting that single issue. Food advocates need to sort of get together and vote that single issue. And so this isn't about, you know, great tomatoes. This isn't about, you know, going to a green market and having a nice little social time. This is, again, it's about what we feed our children. So we need to move out of our comfort zone. We need to acknowledge that this battle is being waged in a political sphere. You know, Eleanor Roosevelt said that the freedom of man is the freedom to eat. We all should feel really good about our commitment and about what we're doing here, about creating a sustainable food system, one that's healthier, one that's affordable, one that works for everybody. We got to get involved in races and start calling out our elected officials. We have to work together. We have to create tax incentives to promote good behavior. We have to continue to bring awareness to Americans so they know how their leaders are voting. And as soon as one legislator loses their job over the way they vote on hunger issues and food issues, when that happens, we're going to send a clear message to Congress that we're organized, we're viable, and we're strong, and yes, we have a food movement, and it's coming for you. And if I can leave everybody with one call to action, that call to action is vote food. Vote food. Thank you.